Ensure that your mobile devices or mobile phones are switched off. If you're not speaking, please mute your microphones and turn off your cameras, Ian and Philip, and only turn them on when speaking, and introduce yourselves when you speak. To ensure that the smooth running of the meeting, could members wishing to speak please put their hands up on the facility on Teams. Please note that the meeting is currently being webcast live. The members of the executive who are here tonight are myself, John Halsall, I'm the leader of the council, John Kaiser, who's the deputy leader of the council and executive member for finance and housing, Parry Bath, the executive member for the environment and leisure, Ulla Corinne Clark, the executive member for children's services, Charlotte Haytham Taylor, the executive member for regeneration. I can't see Pauline here yet. So Charles Margetts is here as executive member for health, wellbeing and adult services, and Gregor Murray, executive member for resident services, communications and emissions, and Wayne Smith, executive member for planning and enforcement. That means Stuart Monroe and Pauline Jorgensen at the moment are absent, and Stuart sends his apologies for absence as he's getting his jab. The officers supporting the meeting are Susan Parsonage, the Chief Executive, Andrew Moulton, the Monitoring Officer, and Anne Hunter, the Lead for Democratic Electoral Services. So thank you very much, and I'll just make a few remarks at the beginning of the meeting as is appropriate in this time. The budget meetings of the council are where the administrator sets out the future. However, we must acknowledge a year which has been extraordinary. Deaths within the UK for those who have been diagnosed with COVID within 28 days have risen close to 120,000, a huge rise since we last met. Please join me in a moment's silence for those who have died during this dreadful pandemic in Woking, the UK and around the world, and those who have suffered not just the effect of the virus itself, but the problems which have accompanied it. Our lives have changed unrecognisably for some, and many of lives have been so sadly lost. I can only reinforce my condolences for those that have suffered for so much. Can we just have a moment of silence? Thank you. The weekly rate is to the 13th of February is 76.6 today, which is well below the peak of 606 on the 4th of January, but still compares very badly to the 5 in August. Sadly, deaths and hospitalizations will continue high for some time, but seem to have stopped rising. Our GPs have been magnificent and have now vaccinated the over 70s, including me, residents in care homes for older adults, their carers, frontlines, health, social care workers and clinically vulnerable individuals. The next cohort is now being vaccinated, so light is genuinely at the end of the tunnel. I would like a big thank you again to all the carers, doctors, health staff, social care staff, health, police, fire, rescue, ambulance, teachers, social staff, charities, volunteers, our staff, in short, everybody who has stepped up to the plate and made it possible for life to continue during these appalling times. It has never been more vital that we play our role. Many of our critical proactive measures going over and above would not have been possible if we did not have a stable and strong financial foundation on which to fund our numerous measures intended to assist our community. COVID has had a profound impact on the council's budget. We had new responsibility that's needed funded. We lost vital income sources such as car parking and leisure, and we had to put on hold cost reduction programs in order that our staff focus on important job in hand, responding to the pandemic. Despite all of this, we had the financial resources to go well above the bare minimum and provide so much more for our community, examples of which I've previously conveyed. It is this that illustrates the true strength of our financial management as recognised by numerous external assessments, and not the misleading and irresponsible claims you hear. Our response in many ways has been astonishing. We have utilised the council's existing emergency planning process to enact a coordinated, managed and timely response to the crisis, sought to protect residents in care homes by taking action locally, supported care homes by supplying PPP, critical advice, staff resources where needed, resisted national policy to discharge from hospital to care homes unless testing and controls were in place. And I expected to find myself in the jug, but I wasn't. Reduced homelessness to a single rough sleeper, introduced lateral flow testing initiated to enable our residents to meet their loved ones in care homes, which we had to abort during the lockdown. Set up a community hub with voluntary sector partners to protect and ensure the vulnerable could receive the support they needed. Created the concept of the one front door in the CAB to service all our residents, either by the council or the voluntary sector, and provided extended care support for vulnerable children, recognising the usual family support arrangement was not possible during lockdown. Worked closely with GPs in the health sector to enable vaccinations to be rolled out as speedily as possible. Maintained critical services for the most vulnerable residents, including children, young people and the wider community. Maintained universal services such as waste, recycling and highways. Provided financial support to local businesses and the economy. Redeployed staff to those services and activities of greatest need. In the first lockdown, we had 107 staff redeployed. Maintained local democracy through virtual council meetings, accessible to the public. Communicated regularly and clearly with residents, businesses, partners and elected members and staff. Considered the impacts on particular parts of the community, e.g. ethnic minority groups, vulnerable residents and young people. Identified opportunities to positively impact the council's climate emergency plan. Identified and monitored the financial impacts of COVID. Used a risk-based approach to decision making and planned ahead for restart and the recovery phase of the emergency. It has never been of such profound importance that local government plays its role for the local community, and took every opportunity to advance the highways programme. These are some of the essential measures employed during the pandemic. They've touched every resident and enterprise. With a steady hand, we're navigating through the emergency to recovery, changing the way we work, supporting all our residents and ensuring the services run as normally as possible. This council will not be found wanting to support residents, be it child hunger, poverty or homelessness. We recognise that many of our critical proactive measures are going over and above would not have been possible if we had not had a stable and strong financial foundation on which to fund our numerous measures. The budget proposals before you tonight are therefore set in this context, one of the continual uncertainty and challenge, but one that sets out our stall for a strong recovery. Thank you very much. Could I then come to the meeting and ask members whether they have any changes to the minutes from the last meeting? Could somebody propose the minutes and second them, please?
I'll propose, John.
I second.
Thank you, Corinne. Any declarations of interest? I have a declaration of interest so that I'm a director of Optalis, an unpaid director of Optalis, I should say quickly. Any other declarations of interest?
Yes, Chairman, I have a declaration of interest, again, non-paid, as a non-executive director of the Loddon Homes.
I too, Leader, I have a declaration of interest as a director of the housing company and also Optalis.
And me, John, WBC Holdings.
Okay, anybody else? No? Okay, thank you very much. Then we come to public questions. And I think the first public question is, Philip, your question will be taken by John Kaiser, who's the Executive Member for Finance. Philip, fire away.
Could you tell me why that is happening, please, before I start?
Because he's the chap responsible for it.
I see. At the last executive meeting on January 28th, you claimed it was an honest mistake that the composition of the Standards Committee was not compliant with the WBC Constitution. As leader of the council, you took responsibility since the buck stopped with you on this matter. But you did not accept when I put it to you that it was symptomatic of a wider disregard of constitutional rules. I watched the Audit Committee on February the 1st, during which members realised that the Constitution had been flouted because the numbers in the Treasury Management Report, which the Audit Committee had agreed in November 2020 and then forwarded to the Executive, were replaced by new and materially different numbers, whilst the approved November numbers were relegated to an appendix. Were the changes which amended the Audit Committee's approved as received Treasury Management Report caused either by another honest mistake, as you admitted regarding the Standards Committee issue, or is it further evidence which suggests that compliance with the Constitution takes place to the political convenience of the ruling group?
Thank you very much. Councillor Horsell has already explained to you there was no constitutional breach with regards to the composition of the Standard Committee and why this was so. The other part of your question, this is why the reason I'm answering it, because I also attended the meeting, is the same posed by the two Liberal Democrat members at the meeting. And as you watched the meeting, you would have heard the officers reply to those allegations. You have, like the Liberal Democrats at that meeting, suggested that the reports considered by the Audit Committee at the meeting of the 23rd of November was changed before being presented to the Executive on the 28th of January. I can categorically confirm this was not the case. The report reviewed by the Audit Committee was presented to the Executive fully and unabridged, as required in the Constitution. Audit Committee is required to review progress against Treasury management indicators, which they did on this case, and note further information in the report. At the Executive on the 28th of January, it was asked and did note Appendix A, which was the Treasury Management Mid-Year Report, which was agreed at the Audit Committee on the 23rd of November 2020. This stated quite clearly in the covering report recommendations, and furthermore is covered in more details at the second paragraph of the Executive Summary to the Executive Report. Therefore, the report the Audit Committee debated and agreed democratically is the one that was being presented to the Council and does not need to be presented back to the Audit Committee. However, in passing the report noted by the Audit Committee to the Executive, our Statutory Chief Financial Officer thought it would be helpful for the Executive and the public to be aware of a broad impact of the Treasury Management activity to be included. The management activities by including the income generated by our commercial activities funded by the borrowing. This information was conveyed by the way of covering a report, and I would consider it to be extremely helpful, particularly given the recent media debate around the cost of the council's debt to the local taxpayer. So the Treasury mid-term report presented at the Audit Committee was not changed. The Audit Committee discharged their responsibility under the Constitution, and the Chief Financial Officer, who is required to provide a covering report in the passing of the mid-year report on onto the executive. So there is no constitutional breach here whatsoever. What I do find alarming, however, that there is the real issue here is not the alleged breach in the Constitution, but the fact our borrowings and our financial returns from our borrowings are in a credible, healthy state. And that is despite the impact of COVID-19. There are those making alarmist claims that our borrowing is reckless, even to the extent of costing households £10,000. This is, of course, absolute nonsense and merely irresponsible politics. You can clearly see from the public report produced by our statutory Chief Financial Officer the impact of all our borrowing activities for schools, roads, care homes, housing and everything else comes at a credit to each householder each year. Let me say again, we get our roads, schools and other essential assets for our community at no cost to the council taxpayer. In fact, they receive a credit. This is achieved because the income from our commercial and investment activities not only fund but exceed all of the council's borrowing costs. This is a remarkable achievement and should be applauded. We should both be assured and delighted by yet another indicator of the strong financial management, which is vital to us being able to meet the needs of our community, particularly during COVID-19. But incredulously, this isn't the issue being talked about. This isn't what questions are being asked about. I wonder why. Do you think that it's our opposition finds it galling that we're holding up so well during this pandemic and we aren't plummeting into any form of financial crisis? This is so wrong and makes no sense to me. Petty politics to detract from the fundamental issues. We are strong, ready and capable of being able to continue to step up and meet the needs of our community in delivering the services at the high level we do.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary, Philip?
Yes, I do. First of all, thank you, Councillor Kaiser, for answering my question. My supplementary is directed to you, Councillor Halsall. The criticisms voiced by the Audit Committee, I think, result from the continuing determination of the ruling group to bulldoze through their needs, irrespective of the Constitution. Firstly, it was the Standards Committee, and now it's the Audit Committee. Both issues show, for me, that you have not stuck to the rules like you instruct residents to do so on those COVID signs on lampposts through the borough. You have undermined the respect, Councillor Halsall, and authority required of your leadership.
Philip, this is not a question. This is a statement.
It's coming. I can only put my question at the end. So will you just grant me? I've listened very carefully and fully to the lengthy response from Councillor Kaiser. Can you please just grant me the same? I shall be over within a matter of seconds. I go back to the beginning of what I was just saying. You've undermined the respect and authority required of your leadership and the compelling need for the affairs of this council to be seen and conducted in a transparent and lawful manner. The only way forward, Councillor Halsall, since you fulsomely assured the last council meeting that you're a Democrat and that the buck stops with you, is for you to stand down. It will be the first step in putting things right. Will you please do that?
Thank you, Philip. Your opinion.
Well, can I have your answer, please?
I've given you my answer, and I've given it on more than one occasion. Thank you very much for your question. Mr. Shenton, Ian Shenton.
Good evening, Chairman. I have a question on a different topic. I'm very pleased to see that trees have gained a line in the budget, with tree inspections being allocated £80,000 for each of the next 3 years. Trees perform an enormously valuable service by sequestering carbon, filtering particulate matter, stabilising groundwater levels to alleviate flood risk, and fostering biodiversity, whether alive or dead. Indeed, there have been several attempts to place a monetary value on their service, and while it depends on variables such as maturity and location, a tree's value ranges from a few hundred to several £1,000s in cost avoidance. As you estimate that the council is responsible for around 100,000 trees, would you not agree that, given the value of their service, 80 pence per tree is hopelessly inadequate?
Mr. Shenton, Parry Bowles here at this end. Thank you for your very good question, actually, and I couldn't agree with you more for your very valid comments about the very important role that trees perform in protecting our environment. The budget to support trees in the borough is not limited to the item proposed through the medium-term financial plan over the next 3 years that you refer to. Incidentally, this allocation of £80,000 is to fund a further 2 members of staff to enable the council to fulfil its duty to inspect all of the trees on its own land in the interests of public safety. And as you can well imagine, to protect the public, we must do that. And this is in line with an updated tree inspection policy, which will be considered under the individual executive member decision, that's myself, on the 31st of March 2021. Works to trees identified through this inspection regime are undertaken and covered by other budgets. Trees are an important focus of the Council's climate emergency action plan, and in addition to the tree inspection team, the Council employs a number of specialist tree and landscape officers to ensure that important and healthy trees are protected from development. In line with the Council's climate emergency action plan, the Council is preparing a tree strategy and to plan to deliver a further 250,000 trees in the borough, Mr. Shenton, and I'm sure you will very readily agree with that fantastic initiative to satisfy the carbon neutral initiative that we wish to attain by 2030. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for that, Councillor. I do have a further question, because I remain slightly concerned that the area is being under-resourced because our native deciduous hardwoods are now facing serious threats from an increasing range of pests and diseases. For example, given that ash dieback is likely to decimate our ash tree population, what percentage of the council's tree cover is under threat, and where is the budget to replace those soon to be lost trees?
Mr. Shenton, like I said, we pay due attention to all the trees within the borough, whether they are owned by Woking Borough Council or whether they're privately owned as well. And we do all our best to protect those trees from any pesticides or any insects or whatever that might attack them. And we work with the Wokingham District Veteran Tree Association, which is a very active organisation, and we work with that organisation to protect our trees. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shenton. Now we come to the members' question time. Gary. Gary Cowan. Have we got a Gary Cowan here? I don't think we have. Anne, do we?
No, Chairman. Councillor Cowan doesn't seem to be in the meeting, so he will get a written response.
Okay. Rachel Burgess.
Thank you, Councillor Halsall. My question is to the Executive Member for Highways. So there have been numerous resident concerns raised regarding London Road in Wokingham since the new cycle lanes have been introduced. These have included the safety of the new cycle lanes themselves, the safety of and lack of compliance with the no right turn at Whitlock Avenue, concerns about other junctions along that road, and the lack of pedestrian crossing along quite a long stretch of London Road where lots of people and numerous families need to cross. So residents have raised these issues out of a sense of safety, of community safety, as well as a genuine desire, I think, to support walking and cycling, and they're right to expect the council to address the concerns. So can you tell me what is being done to address these resident concerns?
Thank you very much for the question, Rachel. The London Road Cycleway scheme, which I think is actually a very nice new cycleway actually, and uses recycled curbs amongst other things, like all highway projects, goes through a rigorous process of road safety audits at various stages in its design and construction. A stage 1 road safety audit was carried out at feasibility, a stage 2 road safety audit was carried out at the detailed design stage, and more recently a stage 3 road safety audit was carried out now the scheme's operational. The scheme we've delivered has been in line with all the recommendations of stage 1 and stage 2 RSA, and the project designers are currently considering the relatively minor recommendations from the stage 3 RSA, which we will implement. It's because of the rigorous safety audit process, which is carried out by independent qualified road safety experts, the council is able to reassure residents there are no immediate safety concerns with regard to the junctions of William Healers Way, Whitlock Avenue, Froghall Lane, Priest Avenue and London Road. Whilst this has already been communicated to some residents, the council remains willing to engage with anybody in the local community who has any lingering doubts, and I'd be happy to answer any further questions. With regard to the specific issue of non-compliance with the no right turn restrictions, joining London Road from Whitlock Avenue, officers have met with representatives of the local community on site to discuss what additional measures might be possible to improve compliance. Unfortunately, when people drive dangerously, it's quite difficult to do something about that sometimes, apart from putting a policeman there. The meeting concluded it wasn't possible to have any additional physical barriers to a right turn without causing significant problems to people turning right into Whitlock Avenue. If you put a barrier across to stop a right turn, you also then wouldn't be able to turn into there. And if we put some restriction in the middle of the road to stop people bearing right at the end, it would mean that cyclists and pedestrians wouldn't be able to cross safely. So we've got a bit of a problem there. We're considering whether additional signage would be appropriate to help drivers to recognise there is no right turn, the no right turn restriction, and to obey the highway code. I mean, that's the fundamental thing. People are driving dangerously, and really they should be obeying the highway code and not doing that. On the issue of sufficient pedestrian crossing facilities on London Road, it's worth noting the project has only resulted in the removal of one pedestrian island. There are formal crossing facilities at regular intervals which serve the vast majority of families wishing to cross London Road. In fact, I looked at it just before the meeting, and 1.5 miles of road, there are actually 5 pedestrian crossings, which is probably an unusually high number. There are, however, a handful of properties that now have a longer walk to the crossing compared to the previous layout, and I do recognise that. You may be aware that when there is new cycle design guidance from the DFT in Local Transport Note 1/20, the new guidance was too late for us to incorporate in the design of this project, and the council will be making use of the guidance for new projects. We're looking forward to adopting it shortly. Have you got a supplementary?
I do, thank you. Yeah, so I mean, with respect to the safety audits, you're right that residents do know that they've been carried out, but they don't feel that that's addressing their specific concerns. You know, they're aware that that's been done and the sort of process has been followed, but it's not addressing some of their specific concerns. And I think we're all being encouraged to walk and cycle, quite rightly, but we should expect safe and convenient routes to do that. And, as you know, this is a busy A road. Lots of people will be trying to cross it. And I think, if the residents are actually concluding that it's safer for them to drive rather than walk to school, then something's gone wrong there.
Maybe.
So,
go on.
I was just going to say, I appreciate your answer and thank you for that of what's been looked at. Would you agree to visit the site with me and to meet residents just to explain what has been looked at and sort of understand their concerns directly?
Yeah, that's actually what I was about to suggest, Rachel. Yeah. Maybe between us we can help explain things to them a bit more clearly and help them understand what the facilities are and what we're planning and what the audits have done. So yeah, I'd be happy to meet you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question.
Thank you. That concludes the questions. Can I now come to the main body of the business, which is on page 31 of the bundle. John.
Thank you. This is basically our annual report on the HRA. The HRA, as everybody knows, sitting at this table, is a ring-fence fund. Unlike some councils, we decided that we would retain our social housing rather than passing them on to a registered provider, because we felt we were better placed to administer and maintain our social housing. The report is there for everybody to see. It's in a healthy condition. I'm also happy to be able to report that during the COVID-19 year, which I guess this will be known as going forward, we were able to carry out all the major repairs that were required, and the vast majority of the repairs that were scheduled to be repaired this year. So basically, what I'm asking for is I'm asking that we approve this, and the recommendations are as follows: that the housing revenue account budget appendix A, the council house dwelling rents are increased by up to 1.5% effective from April the 21st, in line with the Welfare Reform and Works Act 2015. 3, garage rents are increased by 1.16% effective from the April 2021, in line with the council's general fees and charges. 4, shared equity rents to be increased by 1.13% based on September's RPI effective from April 2021. That tenant services charges to be set based on cost recovery. That the housing major repair capital programme for 21-22 as set out in Appendix B, and the shared room guest charges for 2021 to 22 remains unchanged at £9.50 per room per night.
It should have said sheltered room, John.
Oh, sorry, sheltered. Missed that. Sorry, sheltered.
Any questions? Anybody want to raise anything? No. So those in favour? So any abstentions? Anybody against? Nope. Thank you. That's carried. Thank you, John. I'm afraid it's all you tonight.
Yep.
So,
okay.
Page 41, the capital programme.
Okay. I mean, basically, this is basically. I'm just getting the right page. Sorry. The capital programme. It's to consider the recommendations of the in respect to the capital programme strategy 2021 to 2024, and the recommendations are the executive approve the capital strategy, Appendix A, the 3-year capital programme 2021 to 24, Appendix B, and the draft vision for the capital investment over the next 5 years, Appendix C. The use of developers' contributions funding, S106 and SEAL, for capital projects as set out in Appendix D D approval is sought for the projects in the budget.
I think that's it's a huge programme, John. It's you have £445 million, and the programme is all funded except for 11 million, which we're funding on our own resources, one of which, of course, is the Twyford Library. So, Pauline. Pauline?
Sorry, thank you. I was still on mute. Thank you very much, John, both Johns. I just wanted to say I'm very excited to see the investment in roads and transport, and also sustainable transport, that we're seeing in this budget period. I think it will really help residents, and I'm very pleased that we've been able to do that.
Thank you, Pauline.
Gregor?
Sorry, John. I just wanted to say I would echo Pauline's points. I'm really excited about the amount of money that's being set aside for climate emergency in this budget and the impact that that can have on our carbon footprint across the borough. I think it's an absolutely fantastic testament to the way that this council is run, that we're able to fund all of these projects and do this fantastic good work for our community at such a difficult time as well.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? No, then let me put it to the vote. Those in favour? Any abstentions? No? Anybody against? No? Okay, thank you. Carried unanimously, John. Page 81, the Treasury Management Strategy.
Just bear with me. The Treasury Management Strategy, basically, this is to consider the recommendations as in the reports in respect to the Treasury Management Strategy 2021 to 2024. The recommendations are that the executive approve the Treasury Management Strategy as set out in Appendix A, including the following, in addition, appendices: Prudential Indicators, Appendix B; Annual Investment Strategy, Appendix C; Medium Revenue Provision, which is Policy 97, which is Appendix D. And to note that the Audit Committee agreed the Treasury Management Strategy on the 3rd of February 2021. To note that the cumulative financial impact on the Council of its borrowings equates to a net credit to the general fund for the taxpayer of £13.64 per band D equivalent at the end of 2021-22, and noting this credit increases to £62.86 at the end of 23-24. Have you any questions?
Anybody? No, I think that's very impressive, John.
Thank you.
So that effectively means that we have a funded capital budget, and it's making a contribution to the general fund.
Okay.
Any other questions? Those in favour? Thank you. Those against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And now the medium-term financial plan, page 127.
Okay. The medium-term financial plan is basically our revenue budget submission for 2021-22. This is to pay for all the services and all the costs of the revenue that the council expects to spend over the next 12 months. This is a 12-month settlement. As you know, the government have included 12, and it brings with it a number of challenges, not least the fact that in real terms, our bonuses or our grants from the government have reduced because of the way they treat new homes bonuses. So basically what this is to consider the recommendations as set out before you in the medium-term plan, financial plan 21-24, and the budget submission and council tax for 21-22. The recommendations are that the executive approve the following: the medium-term financial plan 2021-24, including the budget submission for 21-22, the statutory resolution set out the 21-22 council tax levels as set out in Appendix A to the report, to be provided, and that will be provided on the day once all the provisional figures are confirmed, and that should be available at the meeting, at the council meeting. 3, that in the event that there are any changes to the provisional precept of the fire authority or parishes arising from the precept set in the meeting being held before the end of February, and that the Deputy Chief Executive S151 officer is delegated the authority to enact all relevant changes to the MTFP statutory resolution and council tax levels.
Could I stop you there, John? I'm afraid you've got the a extended level of recommendation. The paper is that the executive recommend to the council that the summary of budget movements be approved.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I've got the wrong one there. Sorry.
And a note to the report of the community and corporate overview and scrutiny.
How did I do that? Sorry, yes.
Committee relating to the scrutiny of budget setting process 21-22 and medium-term financial plan 21-22 as set out in Appendix B. Is that everybody happy with that? With the recommendations?
Yes, sorry about that.
No worries, no worries. A lot of paper, bits of paper tonight. Everybody happy? Thank you very much. So move on to Parry, page 145 of the building control charges.
Thank you, John. Give John a bit of a rest. The report sets out the proposed charges for the statutory trading account to be increased by 1.6%, which is in line with the retail price index, and to take effect from 1st of April next year. And there is a strong business case for it. The current schedule of building control charges was agreed in May 2020. There is a need to ensure that service is offered to all local authorities on a true cost recovery basis. It is essential that the service keeps charges as low as possible to remain competitive, but at the same time ensuring that sufficient income is generated. And this is in order to offer sufficiently competitive salaries to recruit and retain staff to provide a high quality service that our residents deserve. Appendix A shows a comparison between the existing charges and their respective proposed charges in line with the increase of 1.6%, which is in line with the retail price index. And I'm asking the executive to that they agree to the setting of building control charges from 1st of April 2021 as set out in Appendix A to the report. Happy to take any questions.
It seems very self-evident.
Yeah.
Okay, those in favour? Thank you. Carried. So that concludes the executive meeting for this evening. Thank you very much, and see you at council at 8.